We talked about WSOE on my podcast yesterday, and we talked a lot of shit about it. I think that it's definitely something that could be done correct, but it wasn't. It's close. They had the right players. They had commentators that were good. They just did like 4 or 5 things wrong. The matches were great. You're so fucking tired of esports, Moss says. Why do you think I'm here on twitch.tv/Sajam? Big chillin' and doing a little less travel this year. Eventually, when you go to like 4 or 5 things that are clusterfucks, you sort of get the sense that like, maybe it would be better if I just didn't go. Maybe it'd be better if we just stayed at home and I did a little bit of streaming, talking with everybody, you know? For a show like that to be great, you just need somebody who's related. You just need a producer or a consultant or someone who works in fighting games who can be like, hey, here's what you need to do this show right. That's all you really need, right? Hey, here's how the show should look given all the stuff that we have here. Hey, here's the kind of people you should hire. But they were like, fuck it, we know what we're doing. We're the World Series of esports. Those esports gigs don't like to hire outside talent. When an esports company is making a fighting game production, they are the outside talent. So I get why they want to hire people who are working in the WSOE ecosystem, right? But yeah, esports has like a weird obsession with generalizing hosts and having them do all games, right? You hire a host who does everything. Oh yeah, this host does Fortnite, he does Dota, he does Hearthstone, he does whatever. It's always like this. Anytime fighting game has a desk that's handled by anybody that's not a fighting game company, the hosts are always people who are not fighting game related. If that's the way it's going to be, that's the way it's going to be. And then you just fill the desk with everybody else's from whatever community they're from. The problem with WSOE is like, you have a host, then you have the analyst be Markman, and then Action Slacks, who knows nothing about fighting games, right? Already like, okay, that's a weird choice. Then you have an interviewer also not connected to fighting games in some way. We have probably 5 people who could do that job in fighting games. Then you have commentators that are fighting game commentators, so that helps. So the desk is literally Markman flanked by 2 people who don't know fighting games and are essentially there to do the same job. So now you have Markman in the middle, who's the sole analyst, so he has to do all the analysis work for Soul Calibur and for Tekken with no backup on the desk. And you've got, like, to your left and to your right, there's 2 people who are just going to ask Markman questions over and over because they can't tell you why in this matchup, you know, this person's going to go with this character or whatever. Then on the desk, you have Rip and Steve who are doing their normal commentary, or KP, and so, like, they're doing their normal commentary is fine. And then you also have a reporter who's not familiar with fighting games, so the depth of the questions they can ask is always limited to their familiarity and knowledge of the community. But yeah, WSOE, a little change to their talent like roster could go a long way to making the show feel better, because then you have more people who are plugged in and connected to fighting games, and also you have like people who can lean in and tell you like, hey, here's what should be going on, you know. If you have, you know, Slacks and whoever else on the desk, they're like, should we pour bath water in your mouth? He's like, fuck it. This Tekken shit that's about to happen, top 3 of Tekken, who gives a shit? Pour bath water in my mouth. It's going to be dope. If that person was like, you know, Rixta or MYK, it's like, oh, Rixta and MYK can just chat with Markman about what's happening on the thing. When we did E-League, I understand what goes on in that kind of environment where if you're the talent and you're like, hey, here's the stuff we should do. There is battles you have to pick, right, when it comes to that kind of stuff. There are certain things that are probably plugged in and like WSOE is like, yeah, this is going to happen. It's complicated. The thing is you can't, you know, you can't just accept, well, there's a lot of money in this, I guess, so, you know, we shouldn't try to do stuff that's better. It's why, you know, when we did E-League, we always told them, like, hey, here's what we should change. Hey, here's what should happen. Hey, here's this. That's why the stuff that E-League does now, look at the stuff E-League does now compared to what E-League used to do, right? E-League used to have these huge Street Fighter seasons in their studio. It was like, you know, 10 weeks long, this and that. Now, E-League does a production where David and Mr. Aquaman are chilling at home. They do an online tournament with Mortal Kombat where everybody can play from their own personal stream. You don't have to drag them out to the studio or anything and ATL or whatever. So then everybody gets to stay home and stream so they can build up their stream and be on this E-League thing. Make some cash from home, chilling and playing online against other people. And Aquaman and David get to chill at home and do it from home. So, you know, it doesn't cost them all this time and effort to fly out and shit like that. It's cheaper for them to do, and it's probably closer to what fighting games want to do anyway. Yeah, I think E-League doing an open bracket tournament would have been ideal too. I think that eventually that would be the end goal, right? Open bracket tournament that they film and then cut for TV later. People are so strange because I'll tell you, one of the most common experiences I have as a fighting game commentator, right, is when I go and work with other people who are not familiar with fighting games that much. They're outside, they're more in like the esports space or whatever. The thing they always say is, man, you guys in the fighting game community, you guys are just so like hype. You guys have so much passion. You guys are so like, you know, cool. Like you guys are like, I really like your guys' community, blah, blah. Your commentators are cool, whatever. They'll say stuff like that. You guys' community is like so great. And I'm like, cool, man. And then they're like, also, we're going to have a host for this who is our host that works with us, and they're not related to fighting game at all. And I'm like, all right, that's fine. They're like, also, it turns out this other guy on the desk who's an analyst, he's not related to fighting games at all. I'm like, okay. Also, our interviewer doesn't know anything about fighting games at all. We're just nothing. And the rest of the show, we'll just do it how we want to do it. It's not going to be related to you guys at all and what's good for you guys. And yeah, that's the plan. And we're like, what? Excuse me? They have to promote their own brand and people. They're a company collaborating, not just handing the reins out of goodwill. I totally agree. It's why their host, Fallout, if he's the World Series of Esports host, should be on the desk representing WSOE. And if you want your reporter to be too, sure. But if you want to hire an analyst who knows nothing about fighting games and derail the show by having him drink bath water and be completely useless on the show, what was his job? There's no reason for him to be there. The show doesn't need a segment like that, right, to be good. Color commentary? Shut the fuck up. He wasn't doing color commentary. First of all, he's not even on the desk doing commentary. He's on the analyst desk. He's an analyst, labeled as an analyst. Don't say he's a color come on, don't make shit up. You know that's not true. His job in Dota is to be on the mic and go into the crowd and be like, hey, do a Fortnite dance. And they do a Fortnite dance and then people laugh. That's his job in Dota. Zyclops studied for SF. Zyclops did more studying than most people. Wish we could have funded him for EVO? Absolutely not. Yeah, the biggest fighting game tournament in the world that is a celebration for all the things that our awesome community is about. And you were like, we should just fly out Zyclops. Zyclops is cool, right? Like he does a good job when he gets on the mic. He's funny. But there are people that do fighting games 52 weekends a year and not one weekend a year, that if you're going to hire the best, most deserving people for fighting game commentary, I would rather have on the mic. But maybe I'm biased. I think instead we should have hired Slacks and Zyclops to do EVO Top 8 for Street Fighter. That would have been a fucking ball, wouldn't it have been? I'm sure that they would have crushed it. We'll have hologram Mike Ross. We'll just splice together Mike Ross's voice clips, and we'll have him doing the announcement over Top 8 with Zyclops and Slacks. You guys are all like, we got to keep it in the fighting game community and really do it right. But also, let's fucking have Zyclops and Slacks with Mike Ross's disembodied voice being spliced over it against his will. That's how you save the fighting game community. Who are you guys trying to fool here? I'm a fan of Zyclops. But I also am a fan of the people who work in the fighting game community 52 weekends a year and love fighting games. All I think is, like, when I watch a show like WSOE, I think this is a really cool thing that they put together. And it's really cool that they're interested in fighting games. It would be very cool if they had their WSOE talent plugged into endemic talent across the desk, people who are experts in their field, people who really care, like Laminek, who I care about for dropping the tier 1 sub. Thanks very much. People who are experts in the field and work in the community full time and just they're doing their best to, you know, really represent and care about the games instead of someone who's at the end of the desk like, hey guys, I'm gonna light myself on fire. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.